Digital Venture Partners and Black Enterprise, where every week I have a conversation with a prominent Black cannabis professional that I think is representing our culture the right way, but more importantly, making inroads for more Black and brown people to come into the space and achieve similar success. Today, I have with me Akele Parnell, the CEO of 11th Level. He's a fellow Alabama native, a young Black man like myself who's coming into the space and figuring out as it develops and figuring out how do we position ourselves for sustained success in the space. So I'm excited for him to share his experience and insight with our audience. How you doing today, my brother?
Hey man, I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Man, it's a true honor. I've been following your story for a couple of months. I was honored to be introduced to you through a mutual friend of ours, Khadijah Tribble. Once the state of Alabama instituted a medical cannabis program, she did what she always does and became a leader and just organized some of the Black minds in the state or who are from the state who wanted to come together and create some type of information for what's about to come. And recently I've been following your story and you won a cultivation license, I believe, in the state of Illinois. So it's natural for me to reach out to you to share your success and your progress and your work ethic with our viewership. So I would love, before we hop into your particular cannabis ventures, if you could give our viewers an idea of your professional background before you came into cannabis.
Yeah, definitely. And so we actually won a cultivation and a dispensary license. I didn't know that at the time we first talked. So happy Friday. But yeah, so I got in the cannabis industry in the beginning of 2018. My background is as an attorney. I was a business attorney, essentially doing deals, securities compliance, stuff like that, helping companies raise capital, acquire other companies, real estate deals, things like that. And joined the cannabis industry in 2018 with a company called Green Thumb Industries. This is back before Illinois and a lot of states had legalized recreational cannabis. I actually didn't know a ton about the legal cannabis industry. Obviously, been around the plant for a long time. Always a fan, supported adult use. Have friends that had gone out to California and other places to get involved in the industry, like way back in the early days. So it's something I was always like interested in, but not like closely following. And so this opportunity came up. I sort of just jumped on it. I saw that there was a company in Chicago. At the time, only medical cannabis was legal, but it was a company that had operations in different states. And I was like, okay, this is an opportunity for me, as a Black man to get in this industry and start to carve out a space for myself and for other people like me. And I was just like, look, let me get this experience and figure it out. And so that's where it all started. And it kind of grew from there. And I came in, with the skill sets that I did have, sort of always looking towards the opportunity to own my own business in the space one day. And just started soaking up knowledge everywhere I could and meeting people. And, it was like one of the first things that I noticed when I joined the industry, it was like there was no Black people. It was such a white industry. And then so you see the people that suffered the most under the war on drugs, benefiting the least economically from cannabis legalization. So along with me joining the industry and learning the business, I also wanted to be involved in advocacy and carving out a path for other folks like myself.
That's a perfect segue to my second question. Being from a state that, has a high concentration of Black people, to where there was a effective prison pipeline created for cannabis into the judicial and corrective system for Black people in Alabama. How was it? What was your relationship with the plant as a kid, or just growing up in general? Was it something that your family frowned upon? Were they a little bit more open to it? Or is it something that you just tried to steer away from entirely?
Yeah, it was, it just depends. It was kind of a mix of the two. A lot of folks in my family are not, fans of the plant. Definitely would have been like, stay away from it. They certainly always, made me fully aware of the potential consequences of, being found in possession of the plant if, the police get you. And so I had friends growing up that, certainly smoked cannabis. Some were involved in the unregulated market, things like that. So, I've seen it and around it. Even, my dad is certainly a big fan of the plant, although I didn't necessarily know that a lot of my childhood. I didn't really know that until I was grown, but so he was good in that way. But yeah, man, I definitely been around it a good bit, but just certainly had a different relationship with the plant, and you probably keep a certain distance from it. Living in Alabama.
Right.
Even in Chicago in the beginning.
And even the ramifications of employment, even if you don't get arrested for it or with it, you could fail a drug test to get a job that you've been seeking or you've been in search of. So people coming from where we're from, it's always been this consequence associated with the plant. So I think that has been kind of a hindrance for people where we're from taking it seriously. So like when you came into the space, you know, what was some of the advice that you would give to people back home or who you were around who look like us to say, you know, this is something serious. This is a new economy. You shouldn't look at it with the criminalization lens that we've had to look at it in the past couple of decades.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's key right there is like we can't allow, this reefer mania and all the hysteria and lies surrounding the war on drugs and the lies that help, give rise to the war on drugs. So at the end of the day, we know that it was made illegal because it was a part of the white criminal justice system attempt to control Black folks, control brown folks, control the Asian folks actually. And so, a lot of the things and the education that we got around cannabis and drugs was not true, especially when it comes to marijuana. And so, one, I would ask folks to take a step back and look at the real history of the plant. And now that we're moving towards medical in Alabama and legalization in a lot of other states, in New Jersey, and New York, Connecticut, there's an enormous economic opportunity. And there's also an opportunity specifically for people harmed by the war on drugs or for communities harmed by the war on drugs. And, if you're a Black person in America, there's a good chance that, you were either directly impacted by the war on drugs in a variety of different ways, not just being incarcerated, but even having to navigate life in a different way and use the plan. But you are probably from a community that's been negatively impacted by the war on drugs. And so because of that, legalization efforts always take an extra effort to ensure that folks from those communities can benefit from the plan economically, start businesses, and that there's a portion of reinvestment in those communities. And so there's a lot of opportunities, even if you don't want to have anything to do with the plant, legalization in your state will probably include something like a reinvestment fund, so that the tax revenue from cannabis sales goes back into building up your community. It can go back to mental health services, public health services, healthcare services, violence prevention. There's just so many different opportunities for economic empowerment through cannabis plant, in addition to just being involved in the industry. And there's also a special pathway, we call it social equity, where we try to create pathways to ownership and participation in the industry.
That's amazing. And, it's a lot to peel back within that. I would love for you to give our viewers an idea of how did you position yourself in Illinois to apply for a license and eventually win one? And kind of what's like a top line overview of that? And, what are your next steps now that you've acquired the necessary regulatory paperwork that you would need to sell cannabis in the state of Illinois?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, the first thing was just research, man. I mean, actually, I'm gonna back up. Before that, it was just I wanted to do this. I just decided like this is what I want to do, and I'm gonna figure it out. And it certainly didn't always look like it was gonna work out. I mean, honestly, until I got the license, like it was never like a sure thing or even a likelihood that I thought I was necessarily gonna get it. But it was something that I certainly wanted to do. And so, I sort of took that first step, and I found a job in the industry. Not necessarily a job as a CEO or a boss of anything, but just using the skills and the training that I had, as an attorney doing deals and stuff like that in the cannabis industry, and then sought every opportunity I could to just learn more. So, I'm just over here combing over an agreement, for supply and estate. I'm looking at all the ins and outs and operational stuff. If I'm looking at a real estate contract, I'm like, okay, how is this facility designed? How is it laid out? I'm just like soaking up everything. So just like tons of study and reading statutes. I know that's easy for me as a lawyer, but like it's not rocket science, just digging in. And then leaning on folks, making relationships. I was going networking, meeting everybody I could, and just trying to learn and connect with people that I thought, I could learn from, I could help, and then might be able to help me. And then when it came down to applying, I just had this, I still had that drive. I learned a lot, and I learned the process. And I just sort of spent, all my waking hours outside of work for a good amount of time working on the application, putting the team together, and understanding the stuff I didn't know. I didn't necessarily know how to grow cannabis. Initially had to learn, I didn't necessarily know how a dispensary worked. I had to learn. And so I would tell other folks that they're really interested in getting in the industry. You got to learn, you got to connect with folks, you just kind of got to go all in, and it can be worth it, especially in these early days.
And furthermore, like you just came out of the process that probably half a dozen states are either in or about to go into, which is just this whole licensing and structuring the economy for the state. what advice would you give to that Black person who's in a state that maybe just recently legalized or is on the path to it, and they maybe want to replicate your model? Like what was some of the particular to the Illinois market that kind of you had to learn about as it kind of rolled out?
Yeah, for sure. So like every state is different. It's really its own market. And so the unique thing about Illinois and other states, probably like New Jersey and New York, is that these are like limited license states. And so you look at a state like Oklahoma or even California, although it's broken up city by city, you know, in Oklahoma, there's unlimited licenses. There's no cap on the number of licenses. And so the application process isn't the same. It's not like a what we call competitive application process. Whereas in Illinois, you know, when we submitted ours, that was in the most competitive application process that, you know, the US had seen, because, you know, there's only so many licenses. The state of Illinois is large, especially considering Chicago, the third biggest city, and everybody wanted access to that market. One, because if there's only so many licenses, and that helps assure that you can win, you know, and there's pros and cons of that, you know, from a market perspective and from a social equity perspective, but the business opportunity was real. And so, you know, so for that reason, we had to be like among the best. And so we had to have everything perfect. So, you know, that took another level of effort and execution that you maybe wouldn't have had to do in other states, you know, in Arizona or something like that. You know, sometimes it's just filling out paperwork, and sometimes it's making the best case for your business, which is what we had to do in our craft grow application. It's going to be the same thing in New York and New Jersey.
Okay, and what was the, just because I like to give real nuance and clarity to the process, because I think there's this folklore that once someone wins a license, that they're just ultimately multimillionaires and they're just this weed mogul. But in reality, it's very arduous. And even after you win a license, you still now have to build out a successful and effective company. So what was the timeline from like start, like the day you really in earnest started to chase a license to you actually winning one, and what's the timeline on you getting everything open and operable just generally?
Hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, I started thinking about this in 2018. So, you know, how, I mean, that's, you know, 3 years ago. So, you know, I've been thinking about this. And as far as when I really started the application process, putting the team together, reading the regulations, reading the laws and all that kind of stuff, that's like 2019. So, and we just got our license. And to your point about people thinking, okay, you win a license, you're automatically a multimillionaire and all this kind of stuff. That is not the case. A lot of these cannabis businesses fail. That means everybody lost all their money. That's a possibility here in Illinois. That's going to happen to some folks. You know, you're a little safer in limited license markets because there's some value to the license intrinsically, even if you know you go out of business. But you know, it's still real. Don't get me wrong. There's tons of upside opportunity if you execute well. You have a good business plan. You have the right partners. You know, you build a business. You can make a good amount of money. But even the big companies that we talk about so much, like a lot of those, some of those are going under. You know, it's like the .com. Like everybody that invented a tech company didn't become, you know, Jeff Bezos. You know, there's a lot of folks that are completely broke off that, and it's going to be the same with cannabis. But there's also going to be people that get rich, and so. You know, so there's two sides of that coin. And, you know, we're in the process now. We won the license. And now the hard part comes. People think, you know, getting the license is very hard. But actually, probably the hardest thing is what I've been told, and I've been involved in the process with other folks is, you know, building your business, standing it up, building out the facility, building a brand that really draws consumers in and sales is really the big challenge. And so we're in the process of it now. You know, we do have a facility for our grow. We're looking for the right retail spot for our dispensary. We got to raise capital. You know, people don't talk about that enough. A lot of businesses, especially in cannabis in California and other states, failed, especially the Black businesses, because they weren't adequately capitalized. And you can run out of money quick because in the beginning, you're just spending money. You're not making any money until, you know, your doors open. And so that could be, for us, that could be that it's supposed to be 6 months. And so 5 to 6 months, but it could be longer. And so, you know, we got to have enough money to last and be in a good financial condition up to that point, and to build out everything to the degree that it needs to. And even, you know, you got to have some cushion in there, because if anything I've learned about the cannabis business, stuff is not going to always go as planned. So.
Right, exactly. And it's two things that you touched on that I would love to for you to expound on, which is team and capital, right? So you can't walk. This isn't an application where you walk into City Hall and you're like, "Hey, I want to grow weed," and the lady
Right.
write you a note. And some people do have that conception. So I would love you to talk to, how do you organize a team? What do they have to be capable of? And then also on raising capital, how do you identify those opportunities, and how do you successfully bring capital into your company?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, they kind of feed into each other, but the first is like putting the right team and the right business plan together. And so for me, I said, okay, these are the skills that I have. These are the skills I can demonstrate to investors that I have. That's another thing. You might know how to do something, but you got to be able to prove it to people that are giving you their hard-earned money to go do this thing. And so I've been networking, so I knew a bunch of people. So I was like, hey, this person knows HR, this person knows marketing and advertising, this person knows how to grow cannabis at a high level in a confined environment consistently. All right. So that's your grower. I think a lot of people come at this and they say, oh, I want to be the star of everything. And I was like, I never looked at it like that. I was like, okay, this is what I think I can do, is the value I bring. I can work on the application, but I need all these other people. So you got to put the right pieces in place. And then when it comes time to raising capital, you kind of got to do those at the same time. Sometimes those are the same people. One of my investors is also going to help with the accounting. He's going to take a lead on the financial modeling and stuff, which is critical. And then when it comes to actually going and meeting with investors, you want to have that business plan fully developed. You want to start trying to raise money even before you get the license, because you got to spend all this money just trying to get it. And then once you do get it, you got to have the right operational team in there to continue to raise the additional capital that you need to get up and running. And, it takes a team to put all this stuff together. I mean, several people. So just as a founding team, not to mention your full operational team. And so we're still in the process of that, with vetting folks, just doing the same stuff you do with any other business.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, when you announce it and people see the news and they hear about it, a lot of people are kind of jealous in a sense. But, for those of us who are in the know, it's an unenviable position to be in, because it's like, to win it is just the beginning. And, now you have to stand up a heavily regulated business and under a microscope in a lot of ways. But I would love to transition to just your outlook on the future of cannabis. One question I love to ask my guests is, how do you feel about federal legalization? Do you feel like it's going to be a benefit to Black people? Do you feel like it's something that we need to get in a better position before it happens? Or do you think the sooner it happens, the better for Black people in America?
Man, that's a great question. It's something I think about a lot. I actually don't. Federal legalization is good in certain aspects because we're sort of ramping down the war on drugs. It's not ending the war on drugs. Even legalization in Illinois, that didn't end. People are still going to jail for cannabis offenses, and everything isn't legal. You still got to get a license to sell, or you commit crime and you can go to jail for that. So it's mostly going to be Black people. It's still mostly Black people getting arrested. So with federal legalization, on the business side, I don't know. I kind of want all the social equity applicants to get their licenses first, because the licensing is a state by state thing. It's not a federal thing. So the federal government is not going to give you a license. The state is. I want them to get their licenses and start to get their businesses up and running, so they already have their spots in the marketplace. Because once federal legalization happens, and the current large operators that occupy most of the market now are going to just explode, and they're going to have access to capital in a way they haven't before. And then once you have, and this may not happen immediately with federal legalization, but once you have interstate commerce, that's a whole nother transformation, especially on the cultivation side, where potentially you could grow all your cannabis in Kentucky or something with Mitch McConnell, and they bring it in, and that's not what I would like to see. So for now, any cannabis that's sold in the state of Illinois has to be grown in the state of Illinois. So that's a good opportunity for me. They can't go get it from Kentucky or even, another country or from California and bring it here. So there's opportunities there. But, on the war on drugs side, it would be, that's a positive step. Federal legalization is a positive step. On the business side, eventually it will. And there's a big thing called 280E, which is a pretty heavy tax burden that cannabis companies carry. And so with federal legalization, real federal legalization, that would go away. And so Ideally margins would go up, but it's a complex analysis. So I wish I could give a more simple answer, but I want federal legalization to happen for a lot of reasons, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, it can wait a little bit.
Yeah, the thing about our industry is just its unpredictability. Like anybody who acts like they know what's going on or know what's going to happen next, they're either lying to you or they're lying to themselves. In reality, we're all just having to remain a student of it, just pay attention and be ready to pivot at any moment because we don't know exactly what type of news we're going to wake up to. I'm sure you went through, like I've woken up to the craziest press releases or, new legislation being passed federally, or in a state like Mississippi where they just rescind their medical program. So it's like we never really know what's about to happen. All you can do is just be available and ready to adapt. But I would love for you to talk about kind of what are some of your long-term outlooks that you want to accomplish in the cannabis space. I know you just won your first 2 licenses, but you strike me as someone who thinks several steps ahead. So I would love to know, what are some of the goals you set for yourself in the space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my goal pretty much since the beginning is to carve out a space for Black and brown folks in the industry, especially folks that come from communities harmed by the war on drugs. And so I want to continue to build a space for us in that industry. And I think that means, new Black owned companies, larger Black owned companies in the space. We have what we call MSOs, or multi-state operators. And so I want to see more Black owned multi-state operators in the space, with brands that are strong and compete with best brands in the industry. And, I don't think there's a lot of great brands in the industry right now. It's still in its infancy. And I think there's a ton of opportunity. And I just want to see like our full talent and abilities displayed in the industry, because we really drive what is cool and what's popular in the culture. And we see that in music. And I think there's a similar opportunity in cannabis, especially with branding, because we influence it so much. Think about the strongest brand in the industry right now is Cookies. That's founded by Berna, Mexican American, heavily a rapper, heavily influenced by Black culture. And so, we've already sort of carved out that space. And so I want to continue to see us develop that and see some good financial returns on that.
Yeah, whatever Black people decide is cool, is profitable, and has value. One thing that you had mentioned that I would love to follow up about was when you talked about just networking, meeting people. One impressive thing about your feat was you did all of this during a pandemic where there were no conferences, there were no meetup, there were no networking events. So how did you figure out how to continue to expand your Rolodex and access to people, in the midst of COVID, which we're still in, but just any advice you may have for someone who's like, okay, I want to get in this space and network, but they may not know exactly how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I jumped on those Zoom calls, all that, a lot of Zoom calls. A lot of it comes naturally. I just try to connect with people, in ways that, feel authentic and make sense. But there's certainly an intentionality. It doesn't mean it's not intentional. And so there was a Zoom about something going on in New Jersey. One, I want to know what's going on in New Jersey. And then, I start talking to people in New Jersey, or if I got another friend here and they know some people over there, then I connect that way. And, just be intentional, connect with people authentically, look for ways to help folks. You'll get helped in return. And, we had to do that virtually. It's not the same as connecting in person. There's always that additional benefit from that in-person contact. But now I'm starting to meet people that I had only seen on Zoom before, and then we meet in person. And then, it's like you really got that solid contact now. So yeah, I would say that you can't let the pandemic and the virtual environment prevent folks from connecting, and join those Zoom calls, those meetings. I did a lot of volunteer work. I mean, like I still have, like, other than my jobs, like my day jobs, not really gotten paid off anything in cannabis for real. I mean, done consulting here, a panel here, but even winning a license, you don't get a check with that or anything. So just putting in the work, and a lot of it, you don't get paid for it immediately.
Yeah, I tell people when I tell them I'm in the space, they assume that I have like this 40-acre grow where I'm just selling weed by the pound every day. But in reality, it's in its infancy. And to your point, we are in the stage of where we're trying to contribute. Like, how can I learn? How can I grow? How can I get access to this space? And the money comes after this part of the process. So I definitely appreciate your insight. I would love for you to leave our viewers with where they can follow you and your company on social, or where they can reach out to you directly if they have any questions about coming into the space.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram at Akele_J, it's AKELE_J. Our company is brand new, so we don't even have a social yet. We're gonna get one soon, and you can find us. But more so, we just want to, we really want to push our brands, and so once we do that brand launch, then we'll be on social. But the other organizations I'm with, Chicago Normal, Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition, and then I run a cannabis incubator focused on social equity applicants under Lantern. Lantern is a e-commerce delivery company based out of Boston, but operating in Boston, Mass, could be in New Jersey, Colorado, Michigan. And so, my day job, when I'm trying to run my company, is to get other Black and brown folks into business and teach them how to run theirs. And so that's what I do through there. And so you can find out more about them, their Lantern on Instagram, and love to see some more people reach out, and we can help them get in the industry.
Yes, sir. And I'll be honored to come to the opening. We plan to do an in-person interview on site. Please give me an excuse to come to Chicago and meet with more Black people. So I'll be honored to just follow your progress, be involved, and have a way Black enterprise can be involved. And we look forward to seeing more of your progress in the future.
Absolutely, man. The invite's there, man. Can't wait to see you pull up.